Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Herschel Walker, football fame, Georgia, Texas resident, going to run for, I guess, Senate in Georgia. Admitted on the Howard Stern show, and this stopped me in my tracks today. I've heard a lot of crazy. I've heard a lot of insanity from Republicans over the last, forever. This one kind of blew my mind. Fortunately, in Herschel's case, not so much. Evidently, Herschel Walker told Howard Stern that he has played Russian roulette at least 6 times because he just loves competition so much. I just love to compete, he says. I just love to compete. You go, explain the was the squirt gun full of ivermectin? What the? This could be someone in the U.S. Senate. This is indicative of the world we now live in. I love competition. I'm literally going to compete to blow my brains out. And when you look at this, you go, everything else, not as stupid. Everything else, not as ridiculous. When you go to this extent, we've now, I think, and I'm sure there's somebody out there go, no, Rick, if you think this is extreme, here, hold my beer. I will show you. I'm looking at this is the outer limit. No, the fact that you're really willing to blow your brains out just because I love to compete. Oh, good news today, though. Good news today. Joe Biden has officially won Arizona more times than any president in the history of the country. Again, just from this one election, what is this now? Like the 65th time we've declared Joe Biden won Arizona. What I really love about today's story, though, because if you didn't know, cyber ninjas, they finally came out and finally put out their report. I remember they had some COVID scary stuff that they, don't want to put it out just yet. This was weeks ago when it was actually due. This is kind of, hey, Friday dump, just so maybe nobody pays attention to. Trump lost again. He's officially lost. Biden's officially won Arizona more. Trump's officially lost more. And I got to think that's probably not sitting well with the guy who, now synonymous with sore loser. What I love about this story, and before I get into it, what I love about it is that the Arizona GOP is really feeling cheated tonight. As their sham audit didn't produce the results of their wet dreams. But here's the thing. I still think that they got what they really wanted. With the people at the top, again, who know what this is really about, I think they got what they wanted. They wanted all of the data. They wanted all of the software information. They wanted the machines. They wanted to know how to actually steal an election in the future. And I think they got that. But the fact that the vote count didn't actually go their way. Ultimately, they spent about $7-8 million and got nothing but taken. The report, like I said, released today, 110 pages, titled Maricopa County Forensic Audit by Cyber Ninjas. It almost sounds like a comic book, doesn't it? And it should be, because it reads like one. It's in 3 sections. The first section is basically telling the state of Arizona all the things that's wrong with their election system and what they need to change. A lot of kind of a what's what of right-wing lunacy. You don't get to the part that says that Donald Trump lost again until the third section, well into it. So you got to get well into it to get to where the actual point is. He lost again. And this is the great part. The best part. He lost by more votes than he did the first time. So I'm like, hey, you know what? Spend another $7-8 million. Count them again. Maybe you can jack that up another, couple of thousand more. Maybe you can do that again. it's just crazy. Now what they've done is it wasn't really about this count. It was the issues. We were really concerned about the issues. Voter integrity, the process. That's what was so important. Not the fact that we were trying to steal the election. We were trying to be part of the 6-point plan and the 2-page memo, sending, an alternative set of electors so that they could break the Elections Act, the Electoral Count Act, so they could then put their sham plan into action. Yeah. Now it's about integrity. And this is what I love about Republicans. They're smart. They're smart. The moneyed interests pay smart people to come up with plan B always. Like last weekend we had the Insurrection 2.0 that didn't really happen. Immediately you had plan B with 15,000 Haitians that somehow just showed up in Texas in one place under a bridge. We now find out, there was a lot of planning that went into that, all on WhatsApp. Hey, let's and who used WhatsApp a lot? Oh yeah, the last guy's son-in-law. There's a lot of craziness and stuff going on. Just amazing and remarkable stuff. I'll be honest with you. So here we are. You got this sham of an audit. And I love that the draft report says that the election results are inconclusive because you have to keep the fraud alive. One way or another, the fraud has to stay alive, and this is where it's at. The frustrating part of this to me is there are going to be people who go, no, Rick, understand. They were really caring about, the other stuff, the stuff that they were making up. They're really caring about integrity. They're really caring about, the process. They cared about people. That's what it was really about. It was about that, not anything else. No. So, I'm looking at this just going, in some level, can we please stop with the insanity? Can we please stop with the craziness? And the answer is absolutely, positively no. Because this was never about the election. It was about setting up the steal and setting up future steals. It's about conning the connable. It's about the dim. And sadly, there are a lot of dim on that side. Because here's the great part of this whole story. The cyber ninja people had absolutely no prior experience in doing what they did. But what they were eyeball deep in the whole stop the steal thing. So this, again, it was what it was. It was all about creating that narrative for the 2-page memo, 6-point plan to overturn our elections, but also, I believe, future theft, which is coming. It's coming. So my thought, fool, money, soon parted. We've seen this. And I'll tell you, nowhere is that phrase, and I've heard that a bunch of times. I've heard that a lot. Nowhere is that more apparent than in some of the garbage we're seeing on Facebook and other social media platforms. This whole idea that you can't trust the medical establishment, you can't trust your doctors, you can't trust that hospital. The people who are, institutionally, they spent decades, honing their craft and caring for people. They can't be trusted. And this is really what 40 years of Reaganomics and Reagan-esque government bashing and conspiracy theories will get you. This is what all of the tinfoil hat crowd who have found themselves on Facebook and all the kookery of, there's a pizza place with a child porn ring in the basement that doesn't have a basement. That's what this stuff gets you. And there were a couple of stories that caught my attention today. One over at the Washington Post of this doctor, this pulmonologist who really just had enough. Went home, blasted out this long Facebook post about how he's lost over 100 patients, and even on their deathbed, some people are denying that they got COVID or it exists, or give me ivermectin or I'm gonna sue, or the Lynn Wood thing from a couple of weeks ago. This is one of those moments where They're just pure stupidity. And it's in this mindset that this guy goes, look, I've lost over 100 people, and you've got these people who don't believe because they've been on Facebook or in these Facebook groups are telling them, no, it's all a scam and it's horrible. And, had family members telling them, well, no, we don't believe you. Get me another doctor. Just all kinds of stupidity that has come from us. And there was a quote in an I think it was an NBC article, if I'm not mistaken. A quote by this doctor, this Harvard medical school physician, who quoted this term vigilante medicine, which I thought was the perfect frame. She says it's vigilante medicine being practiced by lay people who are reading groups created by other lay people in echo chambers and silos that likely someone in the anti-vax movement is profiting from. And I've been saying this from the beginning. Whenever one of these new, hey, I've got this. Remember it was something silver at the beginning? Just take this silver stuff and you'll be immune. You'll be fine. It won't get you. Just send us $29.95 and say three Hail Marys and voila, you're now doused in the blood of Jesus. And, I go, no. But people were buying it because they believed. And then it was, what was it? It was the hydroxychloroquine that Trump was pitching. It was somebody actually did drink the bleach. And I'm sure a lot of people shoved the light up the backside. And then it was these other things that keep popping up. I'm waiting for somebody to, like mix lima beans and something with gasoline and kerosene or who knows what. This kind of snake oil salesmanship, it's the American way. It really is. Everybody comes up with their latest elixir or, their tonic. And usually it's just alcohol to make you forget that you feel anything. But in this case, this stuff can really do harm. When I was reading about ivermectin, and especially the stuff you buy at like Walmart or Tractor Supply, not the stuff you get from a doctor, I'm going, this is bad. Especially when you're talking about in doses that are made for like 2,000-pound animals, and you're like a 200-pound guy going, yeah, give me a double dose, because if one's good, two's better. Somebody is making a profit off this. Now, they pointed out in this article that there are some, these Facebook pages like Ivermectin MD team, where I guess you can go into and they have all these miracle cures. And of course, they're for sale. And let's not forget the prayer warriors who, if you send them a donation, they'll pray for your good health. They'll pray nobody breathes on you and you get infected. But for me, it's always been about the grift. It's all been about, the angle that you see these people play. Understand, the right-wing loonies of this media environment, they're all selling you beet juice or some kind of supplement or concoction or some kind of, wish, hope, and pray thing that is, in my view, nothing but a fraudulent scam. But you got believers. I believe. And they suck it up. And look, there are industries into this. So am I surprised that you've got stupid people who are listening to these folks going, no, that healthcare establishment, they just want to kill you. They want to get you into the hospital because hospitals are where people go to die. And it is. It's the place where you go when you're really freaking sick. They're saying, no, get out of the hospitals. Go home and take all of these concoctions or elixirs or go home and become a chemist in your own basement. And, you got some lacquer here, little liquor over here. Mix it all together, see what you get. What more do you got to lose? You're dying anyway. So if you got COVID and you're about ready to go on the ventilator, just go home. I guess that's the view. Because they believe the healthcare establishment is hell-bent on getting them vaccinated so that they can protect themselves, but they don't want to be. And I say, you know what? I don't want you to be either. Because I sat and I thought about this. I go, this is really the stupidest thing that I've heard. It really is. This is one of those moments where you go, is this the future of the country? Because these people aren't doing this out of need. They're doing it out of pure idiocy, out of pure stupidity. And I've come to this conclusion. I've come to this position, and I know it's bad for my soul. It's bad karma. It's bad juju. However you want to frame that. Go. Leave the resources to people who want them. Everyone needs help when they're ill, when they're hurting. Everyone needs medical attention when things are bad. I think we should start with the people who want it. This idea that, they're going to force anything on you is ridiculous. I don't think anything should be forced on you. You have choices. But this is the weird part. The weird part is what my choice friends never think about is with every decision that they make, there are consequences. And it's those consequences that they don't want to absorb. The consequence that if you get sick, right now what we're seeing, the numbers are bearing it out in this story of this doctor in Michigan who said, "Look, I've lost more people than I want to remember." Is it you're going to die? That's the consequence. And he said that there are people who deny the virus from their deathbed, and I got to tell you, there's part of me that goes, I respect you for that. I respect you taking that to your grave. Having that epiphany on your deathbed, going, "Oh, gee, I was wrong. Give me the vaccine now." I think that's on the halfway kind of copping out. If you're going to believe something, go all the way with it. Or maybe just wake up. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm reading through these stories and I'm going, explain to me how it is that you're going to believe something that you read on a social media platform by Jojo the idiot boy in his basement who's just trying to get an extra click or a like or a share or maybe get you to send him $1, and you're not going to believe your doctor. Now, fortunately, we're seeing doctors across the country going, "Look, if you're not vaccinated, I'm not treating you. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to bother. Don't come." And maybe that's where it has to go. Maybe that is part of the consequence. I've heard people say we should be denying people. I've heard people say we should be raising their rates. I've heard all kinds of ideas on what needs to happen as a consequence. And that stuff is coming. But this idea that you're going to trust someone an ad that you saw on Facebook over your local doctor is just mind-numbingly insane. But then again, these are the same people who believe that Donald Trump won Arizona, when the reality is he's lost like 65 times now. Fun times. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back after this.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1875. That was the day anti-black violence erupted into a 2-day massacre in Clinton, Mississippi. As many as 2,500 black Republicans and their families met at Moss Hill, a former plantation destroyed during the Civil War. The day was one of festivities and political speeches ahead of the fall elections. The county Republican Party invited local Democrats to debate. The Democratic state senatorial candidate did address the crowd. The editor of a local Republican newspaper and Union officer, Captain H.T. Fisher, followed him. Soon a group of white Democrats began to heckle Fisher as he spoke. Republican politicians attempted to quell the growing tensions. Almost immediately, however, the heckling whites opened fire on the crowd. Women and children fled in all directions as black Republican forces rushed to defend themselves and their families. By the end of the day, 3 whites and 5 blacks were killed. Clinton's mayor fed off rumors of black retaliation. He called upon white paramilitary forces, the White Liners, from surrounding areas for assistance. Several hundred answered the call and filled the town's streets. Historian Melissa Janczewski-Jones notes that though heavily armed, the White Liners accompanied white locals as they rampaged door to door looking for black Republicans to murder. After 2 days, as many as 50 black Clintonians were killed by white Democrats looking to end Reconstruction and regain political control of Mississippi. A Senate committee would later conclude, quote, "The riots at Clinton were part part of a special purpose on the part of the Democrats to break up the meetings of Republicans and inaugurate an era of terror, not only in those communities, but throughout the state. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, Donald Trump lost Arizona by more votes. Let me highlight the fact that he lost by more votes this time than all of the other previous times that we've recounted these votes. But again, it's not about. Remember, they've already moved the goalposts again. It's not about the vote count. It's not about who won or lost. It's about how we played the game. It's about the process and integrity. The weird thing is now Trump's officially lost Arizona more than any president in the history of the country, which I gotta tell you I love. For me, the question now becomes, what does this mean for the attacks that we're seeing in places like Texas and Wisconsin, in my state of Pennsylvania, as the Republicans have really bought in, drank the whole pitcher of Kool-Aid of stopping the steal? And here to share some thoughts on how do we protect, here in my state, our personal information from an overreaching Republican Party who's hell-bent on not just gathering all of our personal data, but also some of the stuff about our machines. That's why I've asked Pennsylvania State Senator Vince Hughes to come talk with us. Vince, appreciate you taking time for us.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, partner.
So I'm looking at this, and again, I go back to this question. What does this mean? I mean, Arizona went the way I think we all knew it was going to go. Trump lost. Yeah, that's been every time. What's this now mean for the crazy here in our state?
Well, look, it just shows this track record that every time they go down this process, that they lose, and that it's really there's no credibility. There's no there. There is clearly no integrity with what it is that they're trying to get done, and it just really should embolden all of us to really call this out for what it is. And if you review all of these cases, you review all of these situations, even in the Michigan decision, which if you go back just a couple months and read the decision in Michigan, where the Republican leadership who led the recount process in Michigan blasted the Trump forces. The lawyers are being currently, as we speak, are being sanctioned, Rick. All right. So it's just absurd. Now, what does it mean for Pennsylvania? All of us don't need, we need to take a minute, enjoy the Arizona victory, but we need to stay on point here in Pennsylvania, because the information that they're seeking is so intrusive to our own personal realities.
Right.
For every registered voter, and I think we have to repeat it, Rick, it's important that we repeat it. For every registered voter, not only your name, not only your address, your social security number, your driver's license, your voting history, the actual ballots that were cast, and your email address. And then as tied into that, as you know, Rick, when you do a vote by mail ballot, you provide that email address and you provide that number for folks to call.
Correct.
To notify you the status of your vote by mail ballot. So this level of intrusion into our process, not telling us where that information is going to be stored, who's going to have access to it, we really need to stay on point on this. And you tie that to the pursuit in Texas. Now, why they're pursuing Texas, I don't know, because they won Texas handily, all right? But they're even going for the same kind of deal in Texas, and you tie that this is not about winning the election. This is really about causing disdain for the process, the disdain for democracy, and really creating something otherworldly here with respect to who wins and loses.
Right. And I would argue, I agree with you. This wasn't about overturning the election. This wasn't about winning. This, in my view, and you can disagree, this is about data mining. This is about getting all of our information and having everything at their disposal. And not just that, and what we saw in Arizona, it wasn't just about that information. It was about the machines and the software and all of the components. So for me, this wasn't about uncovering some past steal. For me, it's about the future steal, and them having the information to be able to do that, and us providing it to them.
Absolutely. I think you're on point. Remember, and I think you and I have said this before, with Trump, it's always follow the money. It's always follow the money. When you have that kind of data about millions of American people, you can monetize that, which is what he does, okay, or he tries to figure out. And it's always the search for the cash to cover whatever expenses that he's had or whatever expenses that he anticipates on having. Because if I remember correctly, he's got an $800 million debt due in the next year or two. And I'm not sure quite yet how he's going to pay that off yet.
Yeah, and he's not going to be able to go to the My Pillow guy because he's going to be broke after these Dominion voter these cases that are going on right now. And I look at these guys and look, the big news this week, Vince, as you know, was the 2-page memo, the 6-point plan on how really they were going to steal the election. And you now look at all of this stuff in the rearview mirror, all the stuff in Georgia, this debacle in Arizona, and here in Pennsylvania with Mastriano and his crowd. It isn't about stopping a steal that didn't happen. It's really about the future steals and what they could have gotten away with had they been able to get that guy in Georgia to go, oh, okay, we're not going to certify.
Yeah, again, you're on point. It is about the future. And creating this sense of instability or perceived instability in our electoral system. When the truth of the matter is, in Pennsylvania, it worked extremely well. In Arizona, it worked extremely well. In Michigan, it worked extremely well. In Wisconsin, it worked extremely well. All of these cases, everything has worked well, but they want to cause instability within our own minds, so that we do not trust the system in any way, shape, or form. And the only folks who win out in that situation are those who already are financially well suited.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? No, what's interesting to me, Vince, is I look at people like the My Pillow guy. I look at Rudy Giuliani. I look at Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood. At one point, these were respected people, mostly in their communities. They are now kind of, they're kind of clowns. They're viewed kind of as clowns. And I argue they weren't read in on what was really going on because they were running around the country spewing these now we know fraudulent conspiracy theories, and they're true believers. Now, granted, they never took one of those conspiracy theories into a court of law, which tells me at least they understood that. But they've been true believers all along. When do we finally get to go, they're all liars, they're all fraudulent thieves? When do we put them aside and go, now we got to move forward?
I think, Rick, for the salvation of this country, the salvation of this democracy, I don't think we need to let up on pursuing justice and pursuing the truth. I don't think we can just say, Rick, that, all right, gotcha, Arizona didn't happen, Michigan didn't happen, Wisconsin didn't happen. We got you. We see the memo. We see what you guys are really about. When, I'm a believer that when you got somebody, you got to expose them all the way.
Right.
You can't just let a little bit get shown and then walk away and let them off the hook. I think you have to go to the depths of where this conspiracy started, how widespread it was, how deep it was in every level of our nation, and expose each one, and all of them need to be rooted out and adjudicated in the court of law.
And for me, starting with Doug Mastriano, and I know he's one of your colleagues, but for me, that's one of the people that have to go. And all these people who are in your chamber, especially your chamber, who are pushing this gathering of all of our information. I mean, these are supposed to be the people who believe in small, less intrusive government. That's what Republicans used to believe. They didn't want big, overarching government. In fact, I've had Republicans tell me the reason we're so afraid of the state is we have trust in the local governments, and one of the 67 counties control their own data. This is not only breaking the soul of their ideology, but this is a massive power grab for one reason. In my view, it's about stealing future elections.
It is. You're on case. I mean, you said it right on point. They have historically said it, and I've been around the legislature for a long time. They have historically said, return it to the locals, let them handle it at the local level. Now, 63 to 67 counties, did a recount, Rick, and they found out the elections were there were no problems. There was no fraud. They certified each one of those elections. Now they want to throw out that entire process. These are folks who have some very, very desperate attitudes about themselves, and where they're going with this, we need to be all very concerned and pursue them and pursue justice. And they all need to be doing some serious court time, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm right there with you. Listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Pennsylvania State Senator Vince Hughes. Vince, before we get into some of the other things I want to go down, I wanted to get your thoughts of the 2-page memo that came out, that 6-point plan to basically steal the presidential election. Now, I said from the beginning, none of it's new. It's all stuff they trial ballooned in November, all things we had talked about on this program, leading up. But the fact that it was so well written, concise, in such in a 2-page format for Donald Trump to read, really sent chills down my spine. Look, I'm fully cognizant of the fact that they would do that without blinking an eye. But the fact that someone methodically laid that out with such clarity kind of scared me, kind of sends chills down my spine.
Rick, there's an old movie, an old is relative, in some spaces, called 7 Days in May. And I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster and a few other, Ava Gardner, a few other, some of the great actors of our time. And it talks about this conspiracy that was set up by a general who wanted to overthrow a sitting president, and it was very well put together, very well crafted, great levels of detail in the scheme, but in the end, democracy won out. But some of this a lot of this continues to remind me of that movie. It continues to remind me the scheming, the plotting, you remember in that last 60-day period or last 30-day period, Trump was firing folks in different departments and different agencies and replacing them with flunkies who did not know anything about the particular mission that they had. It reminds me of this whole effort to try to put people in position so that when he called it, action would take over.
I would say yes. The thing that gets me is, Dan Quayle. I'm like, I didn't even know. I'm glad he's okay. Didn't know Dan Quayle was alive. History will now not remember him for misspelling potato.
No. Who would have thunk you? Dan Quayle.
Dan Quayle.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We appreciate you being blunt, as is said. I guess that's in Peril, right? In the book Peril. Thank you for being blunt to Pence, to Mike Pence, and telling him what his responsibility really is. The
frightening thing to me, though, Vince, is that Mike Pence had to ask someone. That, to me, that's the frightening part. That it wasn't visceral. Hell no, we're not doing this.
He was searching for a way to do what Trump wanted him to do. Okay.
Yep. He was searching for a way to say yes.
Help me figure this out. Help me find a way. And everywhere he went, it sounds like everywhere he went, he got shut down and finally in the end by Vice President.
And we need this. Now, I understand on Monday there's an event. Our good friend, Senator Art Haywood, and his wife are holding an event. They're going to sue the Department of State here in Pennsylvania to protect their voter information. I think you guys have done the same thing in the Senate. I want to be able to sign on this. I have listeners who say they want to sign on. What do we do to protect our information from this power grab by the GOP and the Senate?
I think, look, Art Haywood is a good friend of mine, as he is of yours. And I think we just need to reach out to him, sign on to, he's looking for folks to sign on. He's looking for folks to join in. we've set up the Senate Democratic Caucus has set up a website, protectpavoters.com, that folks can go to and register their concern. And we need to, again, Rick, and I'm going to say this over and over again. It's one of the reasons why I said, let me join my friend Rick tonight, is we need to not let up. In spite of everywhere we're going, we're seeing some victories. We need to not let up. It is this same attitude that is blocking president, that is going down this path and trying to upend our democracy, that is blocking progress in Washington, D.C. with respect to President Biden's economic agenda and the infrastructure program and the human infrastructure program and the new voting rights bills we need to see passed. It is that same philosophy. We've got to shut this down here, because if we shut it down here, we can also shut the opposition down to the other things that we know are important to Pennsylvania's people.
Yeah, and because I'm looking at this, Vince, and the other thing that gets me is all of this memo to me this week was kind of the smoking gun. And now we see this report coming out of Arizona. You put all this stuff together, and I don't know how, if I'm a supporter of Donald Trump, I can now wake up and go, yeah, I'm still a believer. I don't know how this doesn't make you just turn away and say, this isn't right. Have an epiphany that maybe I've been duped. I'm not sure, but all of this stuff piling on one after another, at some point, does this not have to wake people up?
I would hope it wakes people up, but you know what? I think what it may take, Rick, some significant individual doing some hard time.
Yeah, no, okay? I want that.
All right. I think because there's been so much leading up to this moment that should have been enough proof. So much.
I agree. No,
okay?
I'm hoping that President Biden does release the information from January 6th. I know it's unprecedented. I know Trump is going to try to use the Executive Privilege Act, but what they did on that day is disgraceful. The Confederate flag in our Capitol, disgraceful, and somebody needs to be held accountable. Granted, we didn't hold Reagan accountable back in the 80s. We didn't hold W. Bush accountable for Iraq. We didn't hold the banksters accountable for crashing our economy. We got to hold these people accountable.
It was an insurrection. And you can't just you can't punish an insurrection by 30 days time served.
That's it. No slap on the wrist. I'm with you.
But I think someone very significant is going to have to serve some serious time to get folks to come to some reality that this is what this thing has been all about.
Got to be big. Got to be big. Senator Hughes, I appreciate you taking time for us. Great stuff as always.
My man, Rick. Take care, buddy.
Appreciate it. Pennsylvania State Senator Vince Hughes. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break right back after this. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1918. That was the day that the Industrial Workers of the World Union was banned in Canada. The Industrial Workers of the World Union had grown steadily in Canada, reaching as many as 10,000 members by 1911. The union was especially strong in mining, logging, and the textile industry. But backlash against the radical union was mounting in the United States and in Canada. Swept up in Red Scare hysteria, the governments of both nations targeted the IWW. With the beginning of World War I, labor unions that dared to threaten strikes or to speak out against militarization were met with harsh reprisals. By 1914, the Canadian IWW had less than 1,000 members. In May of 1918, 18 Canadian IWW leaders were arrested while they attended a meeting in Ottawa. Those arrested were immigrants and were sent to a labor internment camp. Then the Canadian government moved to ban the organization altogether. The ban against the IWW would last until the end of World War I. Those found to be affiliated with the union faced up to 5 years in prison. 13 other organizations were also banned in Canada, including the Chinese Labor Association and the Social Labor Party. The act further read that it was illegal to attend meetings, except religious services, during the present war at which the proceedings are conducted in the language of any country with which Canada is at war, or in the languages of Russia, Ukraine, or Finland. After the war, the IWW was once again allowed in Canada and slowly began to rebuild. But the scars inflicted during the war years took a lasting toll on the union's membership. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some great news today. Great news. Captain Kirk is going to space. That's right. William Shatner is going to space on the next Bezos penis rocket to wherever. It is going the Blue Origin New Shepard rocket next month. Captain Kirk going to space. Oh boy, national pride. Yes. Meanwhile, over at Costco, their CEO, Richard Galante, said yesterday that Costco is going to be putting, quote, some purchase limitations on key items. Yes, here we go with the rationing of toilet paper, bottled water, paper towels, cleaning products. I got to tell you, I never knew people wiped and washed so much or were so paranoid about wiping and washing, but here we go again. And here to share some thoughts on our broken supply chain and maybe how bad it's going to be for the big Christmas buying season, I've asked David Dayen to come talk with us. David is the executive editor over at the American Prospect. David, thanks for taking some time for us.
You got it. How you doing, Rick?
So we're all going to be rationed again. No more toilet paper for you. I hope you're stocked.
I'm good. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this is really a continuation of the problems that started in March of 2020. I mean, the way that the global supply chain works, it takes a long time to get things through the system. And tangles that might have started a year ago are showing up on our shores today. And so the fact that we're still seeing dangerous workplaces because of the Delta variant, the fact that really the ultimate fact that we have a lot of production centralized in one part of the world in China, and they have a zero COVID policy, so they're shutting down factories a lot. They've had a tremendously bad weather season. They shut down the Yangtze River at one point because of flooding, and that's going to show up where we are. And it exacerbates the problems we've already been seeing over the last year because of this mismatch between the supply coming in from China and the supply going out.
Yeah. Now, this is something, obviously, while we were in lockdown and while the pandemic was at its height, we understood that there are going to be some things that are going to be kind of hard to kick back online. You just don't flip the switch and the economy fire right back up. But for me, this pandemic has highlighted what I've been talking about for years. And that is, as you pointed out, globalization has made us dependent on somewhere else and somewhere else that's kind of hard to get to instead of just around the corner products made by Joe, your neighbor. For me, the lesson out of this is maybe we need to be pulling back from so much globalization and reshore what we do.
Yeah, and it's more than that too, right? Because it's not just the fact that everything's centralized and that we have one region of the world that's sort of the world's manufacturer. It's also centralized within the particular products. We have one company that makes this, you have Foxconn making a great deal of the world's electronics. I wrote a book about, one of the chapters was about how IV bags, salt and water in a bag, is primarily made by one company primarily in Puerto Rico. So when the Hurricane Maria came through, all of a sudden there was this shortage. There's also another dimension to it, which is when you have these supply shocks, companies like Walmart, companies like Costco that are big enough can dictate to their suppliers, get us the goods first,
Prioritize,
right?
yeah.
And so it spins down to the independents who don't have that buying power that's the same as the Walmarts and the Costcos of the world. And all of a sudden, if you're in a rural community and that's the corner store that you rely on, they can't get goods anymore. And so this is about centralization in a variety of different ways.
No, and you're right. I mean, not just globalization, but monopolies as well. And we've been told my whole life that, capitalism, is the way to go because you have multiple firms and all kinds of competition and all this stuff. So we don't have this centralized model. And look, I'm not an economist, but I always argued that isn't the end result of capitalism monopolies? I mean, doesn't the big fish always eat the little fish? And we end up in this kind of world that we're in now.
I mean, that's certainly what it's been for the last 40 years, because we've abandoned the very strong enforcement that we could have through the antitrust division of the Justice Department, through the Federal Trade Commission, to promote competition. And because they've been sort of taken off the beat, we're in the place that we are now. And a lot of this is just sort of weirdness. I believe this week we set a record in the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles, where I am. There are over 60 container ships just sitting in the water. And part of this is the consolidation of global shipping. And these ships are bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just takes a longer time to actually unload them. And when you have supply snarls, like the third busiest port in the world in China shutting down for 2 weeks because of one COVID case, then you create this weird backlog, and it's just hard to work your way through it. It could take days to unload one container ship now. So this should give us a rethink about globalization, about centralization, and also about just-in-time production, about the concept of we don't have inventories anymore. We don't have redundancy in the supply chain anymore. All we do is we know that we need 10 widgets by Thursday, and through the global system, we'll get the 10 widgets by Thursday. Well, what happens when you don't get the 10 widgets? Yep. And that's what we're seeing right now.
No, and a perfect example is the PPE. When people were trying to find N95 masks, and I have a lot of conservative friends who were yelling at the CDC for from the beginning, not scaring people to death and go get masks quick, because they were afraid they were. And this is my view. You can disagree, but it's my view. They didn't put people into a panic because we needed those masks for hospitals, for our healthcare workers to stay safe, because they knew we didn't have the stockpiles that all of us thought we had. Just like you're saying, we should have had reserves. There should be inventories, but they're not.
And so what you end up with is gouging. And what you end up is the biggest fish are able to get the goods, and the smaller guys lose out. A new kind of phenomenon that we're seeing here is Walmart, Amazon, the big guys chartering their own ships to go get goods and delivering them directly to themselves. We're seeing them create national logistics networks that other people can piggyback on. They call it supply chain as a service. So they're farming out the supply chain. So now not only are Walmart, companies like Walmart, edging out their competition, they're now directing the logistics for their competition. And think about the danger of that when you now are the reliant factor in whether your competitor gets their goods.
Wow.
It's a really dangerous system. And this whole thing, from PPE to semiconductors to toilet paper to everything, should really cause a rethink in our corridors of power. And I know that the Biden administration has done a couple of very good reports about reshoring. They've had discussions internally, but the clock is ticking, and we still have this problem. And the fact that it's gone on for so long shows how dangerous it is, and shows how we need to get started right away on the reshoring issue.
No, I'm right there with you. But how do you in this environment, we can't agree to get an infrastructure package passed through that we've needed for decades, that everyone agrees we've needed for decades. We can't figure out how to get, Granny a new set of glasses. How are we going to completely undo the tangled monster of globalization that decades of billionaires have profit off of? How are we going to untangle this monster?
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's certainly going to be a game of inches. We had a very good bill that included a lot of money for domestic manufacturing. That was that China bill in the Senate, passed with 68 votes. The House has not taken it up. There are things in the infrastructure package to spur domestic manufacturing, particularly advanced manufacturing, green manufacturing, things like that, hasn't gotten through. So legislatively, we're a little bit stuck. There are incentives that you can do at the executive level to bring and encourage more manufacturing. You could crack down on corporate inversions. You could crack down on the outsourcing and leaking out of these various industries. You could create the conditions for American manufacturing to rebound. Another way that is actually it could be into the reconciliation bill is a federal financing authority for these companies that innovate and create these great designs, but then have to go to China to get them manufactured. So we don't have. Sometimes it's called the valley of death. Like, you create this great innovative product, but you can't get it made here, and you can't get financing for it. So if we get the financing, then maybe you're able to continue here in the United States. So this is going to be a long effort, but you can't look at the last 18 months and think that it has to be abandoned. Right. This is absolutely critical to our national security, to our prosperity, and frankly, to our survival.
No, it's stuff that I've been screaming about for the 16 years I've been doing this show. You cannot be a first world country without a manufacturing base. Sorry, if you don't make something, you can't really exist. And I think that our inability to manufacture has come full circle. Now, here's what my fear is. You had all these companies who abandoned this country for cheap labor and exploitable environmental regulations, which, to a CEO is like heroin. They need their fix of cheap labor, which is the reason they went to China and elsewhere. Are you saying to me now they got their heroin fix, they got hugely profitable, they made tons of money, lined their pockets for themselves and their shareholder. Now we've got to pay them to come back so that they get even more wealthy and more powerful, and we now got to pick it up as working people so that we've got to pay to get our jobs back? Is that what I'm hearing here?
Well, I was talking about startups more than the established giants, which I think we should punish for shipping jobs overseas. Right now, they're subsidized, as you know, in the tax code.
Right.
I think that there are going to be a lot of ways to get this done and to work on this problem. But the first is admitting that there is a problem, right? And a lot of times the rhetoric from Congress, from policymakers is, this is the most powerful and richest country in the world. Why can't we do X, Y, and Z? If you can't go to the corner store and find toilet paper on the shelf, you are not the richest country in the world. I mean, bottom line.
That is absolutely the truth. That is simple. If we're worse off than the Soviets were back in the 80s, then maybe there's a problem. I listen to the Rick Smith Show here with David Dayen. David's the executive editor of the American Prospect. He's got a new piece out, The Great Supply Shock We Brought Upon Ourselves. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at this. Now, in your article, you point out that this Evergrande company in China is about to collapse. And I don't think the Chinese government's going to bail them out. And as you point out, real estate's about 30% of the national GDP. It seems like while we're dependent on them, it seems like that could be a house of cards that if they fall, we go with them. So from the national security point, isn't reclaiming some ability to make some stuff probably a good idea long-term on that front as well?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the thing about consolidation and centralization like this is it magnifies disruptions. In a normal circumstance, if the second largest property owner in China happens to fall into a debt collapse, that's not going to be a major factor for us here in the United States. But if it's such a big part of their GDP that it affects their growth rate, and then factories have to close down, and those factories are supplying goods that we depend on, then yes, suddenly that becomes a problem. It's the same thing with, a bad storm season. A bad storm season halfway around the world should not necessarily affect whether or not you can get cranberry sauce, or whether you can get a plastic toy for your kid for Christmas, but it is. And that's the larger problem. It magnifies disruptions. And we forgot somewhere along the line in our brilliant business schools, we forgot that redundancy is important. That is important for sustaining a workable capitalist economy, frankly, and so that I think we have to get back to that.
Yeah, I'm not going to give him a pass on forgot. I think the system is working exactly the way it's supposed to. A handful of people getting wildly rich, richer than they could ever be, so that a guy like Jeff Bezos can take his phallic rocket up to space with Captain Kirk. That's what I think. And then the rest of us end up getting screwed, like these workers in China, by the way, who were basically forced into subsidizing this Evergrande, and now they're stiffed out of getting their money back as well.
Absolutely. I mean, labor injustice anywhere is a threat. And the larger issue here is, who was it initially that created this outsourcing revolution, created this belief in globalization as a way to minimize your outlays and maximize your profits? And it was Wall Street. I mean, this was seen as the prime directive from Wall Street to raise your stock price, to make yourself attractive to investors. Yep. Is to become these multinationals that have no kind of loyalty to any kind of home country. The Jack Welch idea that the country I should be part of is on a barge that goes around the world. That's where I should site my factory. That was the original sin, and that's, I think, what we have to attack when you think about how to restore this is end this short-term thinking. And end this primacy of Wall Street and financialization.
I'm right there with you. David, I appreciate the time. As always, great talk with you. Excellent work you do. Hope folks will take a look at the piece, The Great Supply Shock We Brought Upon Ourselves, written by David Dayen over at the American Prospect. David, thanks so much, man.
All right, Rick, thanks.
Good stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Do we need to be resourcing things quickly? I say yes. You can email me what you think, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1789. Congress passed the Judiciary Act of 1789. This act established the plan for the U.S. Supreme Court. At first, the court was comprised of just 6 justices, appointed by the president with Senate confirmation. The number of justices varied until 1869, when it became set at 9. The Constitution granted the Supreme Court jurisdiction over all laws, but especially those where constitutionality was an issue. The highest court has played a key role in deciding some of the most challenging issues facing the United States. Up until the 1800s, rulings related to labor law were decided by state courts, but the Supreme Court became the deciding body for many labor questions. It was the Supreme Court that upheld the jailing of Eugene V. Debs for violating an injunction against organizing a boycott of the Pullman Palace Car Company in 1894. Injunctions continued to be a tool against labor stoppages. In another famous case, the Lowell v. Leller Case. Often referred as the Danbury Hatters case, Dietrich Low refused to recognize the Hatters Union. He replaced striking workers with scabs. The strikers organized a nationwide boycott of Low's hats. Low sued, and the case made it all the way to the United States Supreme Court. In 1809, the Supreme Court ruled against the strikers. The Supreme Court often showed an anti-worker bias. In the 1918 case, Hammer v. Dagenhart, the court ruled Congress could not enact laws regulating child labor. In another early 1900s case, Lochner v. New York, the Supreme Court ruled unconstitutional a New York law that mandated a limit of 10-hour workdays for bakers. Today, many important labor cases come before the Supreme Court. Do you think it's possible to return to the days of no minimum wage and child labor?
It's time for the Rick. It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a week it was. Lots of craziness, lots of, well, stuff we already knew, some smoking gun verification, the former guy having lots of problems finding, I don't know, people to represent him, just lots of stuff. And, well, it looks like we're going back to the past for some old hits, and here to share some thoughts on the week that was and all of the craziness that we have had. I've asked our all-star panel of Brett Pransky, the professor, Laura Packard, healthcare advocate, and our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter over at Raw Story, to join us. Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start right from the very beginning. We find a 2-page memo, a 6-point plan. The idea being we're going to overthrow an election. Sorry, voters, you're out of luck. Brett, let's start with you. First thoughts when you saw this memo come out from the book Peril by Bob Woodward and Costa. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, once you get past the initial shock of the fact that there really was a plan to actually overthrow, the election, I keep coming back to the fact that it's a 2-page memo. I mean, that just stuns me. I'm amazed by the fact that you have a plan to overthrow the entire government, and you got it down to 2 pages. And they got it down to 2 pages basically because that's probably Trump's attention span. And I'm not saying that, just because I like picking on the guy. That's probably actually why it's 2 pages. When I say it was probably written in crayon, that's me picking on Trump. But the fact is, it's what really stuns me about it is the fact that they thought it was going to be so easy that they could fit the entire plan in a 2-page memo. It just blows me away.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I got to be honest, Laura. I'm looking at this, and the sad thing is this is probably the first plan that they actually had in those 4 years.
Exactly, just like their healthcare plan. I figured that this was more fictional than anything. So shocked, just like Brett said, that they actually had a plan, and also shocked that Mr. Potato, Dan Quayle himself, saved the Republic.
Yeah, it's crazy. Sarah, your thoughts?
I just want to remind everyone that if you're going to crime, do not put it in a memo. Do not put it in writing. It is really advantageous to just sort of keep your criming kind of like under the radar a little bit. So that's my advice.
Yep. No, my grandfather always said this. When I was a kid, he would say, never write anything down, never leave voice messages on answering machines, and never tell anybody, because then you've only got about a 50% chance of getting ratted out. You tell somebody, it's certain you're going to get ratted out, but here it is. But here's the thing, and here's the question. You look at this, I don't think there was anything in that memo that we didn't already know. They trial ballooned all this stuff in November and December. So we were already talking about it, which is why I don't think anybody's paying attention to it really right now, because we already knew. We're like, meh.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that's probably right. I think that the sad thing is that we should be talking more about this because it is a huge deal. And I get that these are issues that we've talked about before, but it's so frustrating because we can't normalize this stuff. We can't just allow this to pass by just because it was a little 2-pager and it's like, oh, we've heard this before. Like it's a big deal.
Right. And it didn't work that time, but they're trying to set the stage so that it will work in the future. You know, they're working the courts and the legislatures and normalizing the idea that this election was somehow stolen. So they are getting ready to do it again, and they might actually succeed if they tried again.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite remarkable. But, you know, the thing that I look at it, I maybe you guys will agree or disagree with me. You know, as I'm reading through each of these points, I'm thinking of my conservative friends who would be reading this going, yeah, that's the founding fathers would have been for this. The folks with the trifold hats, they'd have been all on board. There's founding fathers, you know, stamp of approval on this, so it would be okay. And I know the conservatives would have been thrilled with it because strong leader taking over government. But I also sadly think the Democrats would have eventually, rule of law kind of nonsense come along had they succeeded.
Yeah, that's a real possibility. I mean, again, these kind of creative readings of all kinds of important documents and using them for your own purposes and reading them only in ways that you can kind of use to subvert, the rules and norms. It's a pretty common thing, on the right. We hear this kind of stuff all the time. We usually don't see it, see it attempted to be put into action. And this was definitely that. And so now, good thing that Pence didn't end up, doing his part in the whole thing. Thank you again to Dan Quayle of all people, which I just find unbelievable. But it could have been a whole lot worse. And yeah, I could have seen a lot of people, especially conservatives on the right. Keep in mind that the right-wing spin machine, when it speaks, all of them follow along. I mean, they all march in lockstep, or maybe in goose step in some cases. But they would have gone along. They would have, and there would have been a significant portion of the population saying, "Yep, this is exactly what we ought to do." So it was pretty scary.
Yeah, and I mean, the past 4 years of Trump was all about breaking laws, breaking rules, going as far as you could go. I mean, they stole a Supreme Court seat. In Obama's term, he should have had the opportunity to appoint a Supreme Court justice, and the Republican-controlled Senate didn't even bother to hold a hearing, and they got away with that.
No, and for me, the memo, when you read the first line, they came out and said that there were two sets of electors. There were no competing electors. There were one group of certified electors. And this is where the big lie comes in, because I actually know people who have said, no, Georgia sent two sets of electors. Arizona sent two. I'm going, they may have sent two, but only one was certified. It was done, which is why they were doing the hardcore press on the Georgia Secretary of State to try and get what they needed out of this memo. So now looking backward, knowing now that this was all in writing and that they were working this, Trump going after that Raffensperger is a pretty big deal, don't you think?
I think so, but I wanted to say too that which state was it where the police wouldn't even let the new electors in the building? I mean, there was an actual state where the fake Trump electors tried to be like, oh no, we're also electors and we need to get in there, and they're like, no, you're not. Off you go. And that actually works. Never underestimate somebody who has security written across their chest. And then I would say too, the thing that happened on Thursday is Trump is now talking about doing an audit in Texas, which he won. And really the only purpose of that is to call into question more elections.
Right.
It's to make people less confident in our elections and in our government and all of that. And it's so frustrating because It's so obvious.
Yeah, and we had the My Pillow guy calling into question Alabama, claiming that Alabama flipped 100,000 votes. I'm going, did nobody read the My Pillow guy in on what was the actual coup here? Did no one tell him that all of the claims of voter fraud were actually just fraudulent claims, and the real goal was the 6-point plan? Did nobody read him or Rudy Giuliani in on this?
Yeah, it
Clearly
doesn't
not.
look like it. Yeah, the idea that that this actually got as close as it did, to happening is pretty frightening. It's something that I really think we have to pay attention to in the future, because this could be, they always say the past is prologue. It's very likely that this kind of scheme is going to happen again. Keep in mind, the next time it happens, there have been a lot of laws passed in a lot of states allowing them to set the stage for this in ways that could actually get it done. And so, this has been a kind of a full court press ever since the election, so that the next time it happens, they can actually flip that switch. And, and who knows, maybe the next, whoever it is in Pence's spot says okay, and then they've got the stage set, and then we have a real constitutional crisis on our hands.
Yeah, because if you look at the memo, they tried to get Lawrence Tribe in this. They even got the liberal Lawrence Tribe. I mean, they thought of it. See, the liberals even think this is okay. It's quite remarkable. But Laura, let me ask you, because I go back to this. You look at all of this stuff that we now know, and we knew back then, but this kind of lays it out. What do we do about all of those claims that there was all this voter fraud, all of these shenanigans going on, that Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and none of the lawyers were dumb enough to take into a court of law, but in the court of public opinion just lied, cheated, fraudulently claimed all this stuff? What do we do with that? Does that now mean that they knew that that basically the voter fraud claims were all fraudulent? Is that what that means?
Well, I don't know how much Trump and his people actually believed, or they were just willing to take power any way they could. I mean, his lawyers arrived to work in a clown car, so it's difficult to say what all they are actually going along with and how much they're humoring Trump with. But one thing we haven't talked about is, I don't expect more from a snake than being a snake and doing snake things. But how about the reporters that knew all this stuff and have been sitting on all this stuff for months and didn't bother telling the American public about what they knew because they wanted to write a book and get a big fat advance?
Excellent point. Our reporter person here, Sarah, your profession's kind of let us down a little bit. Not you, of course. You do fantastic work over at Raw Story, and I highly suggest people go to rawstory.com. My favorite reporter in the country. But why did our media let us down?
You're totally just covering your butt there. This is the second time Woodward has done this too. His first book was the one where he sat down with Trump early on in the pandemic, and Trump made it very clear that he knew that the pandemic was a big deal. He knew it was deadly. He knew it was going to be huge. He believed, in whatever science the virus said, and it wasn't until we didn't find this out until the very end that and so the whole pandemic, right, the whole stupid year, we had to deal with Trump lying about the virus. And now it's happening again. And so at some point, you're just kind of like, hey, Woodward, at what point do you believe it's more important to put your country first and money second? Because if it's me and I get that stuff, that's going up right away. I'm not going to write a book deal, try and get a book deal on it. I'm going to put it up because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And that's what should be the profession, right? Yeah. Like, that's what we should do.
No, I mean, it's just amazing to me. But now knowing what we now know, and this is kind of, in my view, almost like the smoking gun, because it is all there. They aren't just conjecture. We just didn't, listen to trial balloons that were floated. Does this now mean that, like Dominion Voting Systems, who are suing Sidney Powell and the My Pillow guy and Rudy Giuliani for gazillions of dollars, and I got to think Trump as well, because he was involved in this. Is this like, Your Honor, Exhibit A, pay us? Let's start with you, Laura.
Yeah, I mean, that may be one of the few ways that we see justice is through lawsuits from aggrieved parties, because so far it doesn't seem like our government is willing to hold these folks to account. So, I mean, maybe money's the only way we're gonna see some people pay.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and you go, Sidney Powell had had kind of a decent reputation. Lynn Wood, I guess, was something of, in some circles, a reputable attorney. Rudy Giuliani was America's freaking mayor, and now they're literally clowns.
I would say too, look at the what the conversation that was reported for Georgia. Trump very much knew that this was all a lie. And the conversation that he had, if, knowing that that was a lie, that is straight up voter fraud. So that investigation that's happening in Fulton County with the DA there, you have to wonder, like, there's no way that he can escape, at the very least, being called out on voter fraud, right? Like, he can't possibly get out of that. Please tell me that's true.
Well, I mean, we have seen him pull off all kinds of really ridiculous criming right out in public and get away with a whole lot of it. The one thing that I think is almost certain to happen, where there will be some accountability, is that the folks at Dominion are about to get a whole lot richer, because their case is ironclad. Now, when it comes to criminality and holding these folks, accountable, in the criminal world, or in the criminal justice system, you never can tell. But I don't think there's any way he escapes charges. I don't think there's any way he escapes being indicted at some point. What happens after that, you have to, it's all the American circus. You have to just let it play out and do what it does. But I don't think there's any way that he avoids charges.
Yeah. So last line of question here, because now that this is out and it's in writing, it's in black and white, it's a Trump lawyer. He's taking it on. Does it matter? I mean, does the base care that their guy was trying to usurp 220 years, 216 years of peaceful transitions of power, trying to usurp an election? Do they care about democracy? Let's start with you, Sarah.
I don't think that they care. The one thing that I would like, though, is being able to tell whatever Trump supporter, whenever you're arguing with him on Facebook, and be like, look, he admitted that he didn't win the election. So why don't you believe that? He's the one who's telling it to you.
Yeah. So no being reinstalled, Laura. That's not going to happen. You don't see the because they keep pushing the reinstallment date off. You don't see that happening, do you?
I'm sure it's just around the corner, around when I'm going to win the $1 billion Mega Millions. But I also think it's important to figure out how systems of accountability can work in our country. Because if you look at all of the gymnastic stars that were testifying the past few days, the FBI knew things and did nothing. Or even go back to when our economy crashed in 2007, 2008. Those bankers got off scot-free. So we've had an accountability problem in our country for a long time, where the people at the top never really get held accountable. I mean, how long was Jeffrey Epstein operating and people did nothing? They made it go away.
Excellent point.
We're definitely dealing with two completely different systems of justice, based on who you are and what you have. And I don't think there's any way we can argue with that, because we keep seeing, people of means, getting off the hook for all kinds of ridiculous stuff.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the guy down the street doesn't get away with anything.
No, you're spot on. Guys, I got to take a quick break right here. Hope you'll stick around through the break. On the other side, I got a lot to get to. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here. Going to take a quick break right back after this. Stick around.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1932. That was the day the Progressive Miners of America wrapped up their founding convention in Gillespie, Illinois. Fed up with concessions and what they viewed as heavy-handed anti-democratic rule by United Mine Worker President John L. Lewis, Illinois miners met to break decisively. Area miners were active in radical politics, and many supported currents within the socialist and communist movements. That July, Lewis opened the contract and agreed to a 20% pay cut. Tens of thousands of miners were furious and threw up picket lines at mines throughout central and southern Illinois. In Franklin County, striking miners were assaulted, shot, and beaten by special deputies and strike-breaking thugs. Many miners thought Lewis had had a hand in the violence against them. 2 miners were killed and hundreds more injured. By September 1st, 273 delegates representing 40,000 miners resolved to break from the UMWA, form a new union, and plan immediate negotiations with coal operators. They drafted a constitution emphasizing rank-and-file industrial democracy. A women's auxiliary was established with Agnes Bernass Wick as its head. It imbued union solidarity and leadership qualities among non-mining women. An enraged Lewis charged dual unionism, but the new PMA alleged they represented 90% of Illinois miners. The split gave rise to the Illinois Mine Wars. Years of shootings, bombings, and assaults became almost commonplace as both unions struggled for power. The PMA soon faced internal fighting as conservatives attempted to wrest leadership from many of the founders. Though the union never dominated the industry, it continued to represent thousands of Illinois miners throughout the 20th century.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, going to be fun the next couple of days. If what we're hearing over the last several days from Mitch McConnell and the Republicans is true, we're going to be partying like it's 2009 through 2016, where every time we turned around, there was a ticking bomb. Every time we turned around, we were down to the last minute to pay our bills, and everyone wondering, what's going to happen when we don't pay our bills? Will the global economy crash? Granny's not going to get her Medicare? Republicans took us to that point every single time during the Obama years, and we're about ready to go back to it. You didn't hear much during the last guy's term because they were smart. They said, we're not going to do it. Well, we'll see what Democrats do. Nancy Pelosi has said she has vowed we're going to avert a shutdown. And here to share some thoughts on partying like it is 2009, I've got our all-star panel of Laura Packard, healthcare advocate, Sarah Burris, reporter at Raw Story, and the professor, Brett Pransky. Guys, thanks for sticking around.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's start with you, Brett. Going to party like it's 2009. I remember the Obama years where each and every time we bumped up against the debt ceiling, it was, we got to have a pound of flesh. We've got to screw things up. And I still remember, them pushing for Screwquester, which did horrible damage to not just our government, but to our ability to protect our soldiers overseas. Thoughts on returning to the good old days?
Well, to tell you the truth, my first thought on it was that is to get a little nostalgic about it, because I was a fan of Obama in most cases. Didn't agree with him on everything, but agreed with a lot of the things that he did. And at least during that time, life was normal. There was a sense of normalcy in America that we have completely lost track of since 2016. So when we're now back to the fights that I remember from 2008, 2009, 2010, I'm like, hey, this was, it's almost hearkening back to a better time, if there is such a thing. But the thing that really puzzles me is the motivation behind it.
Yeah.
I can't figure out why. And I'm like, what's the end game here? Let's say you accomplish your goal and you cause a shutdown. You do the thing that you are setting out to do. How in the world does that help you? This is what I don't understand about what Mitch McConnell's doing. Other than, possibly just the delay tactics involved and just the muddying the waters and so on. If he actually gets what he wants, I don't think he's going to want it anymore. This is the most self-defeating position that I can imagine. And, so if it works out this way, and if we do, get into a situation where we do shut down, I don't see any situation where this isn't pinned almost entirely on Republicans. I don't understand why he would take this position unless he's absolutely certain it's never going to come to pass.
Yeah, Laura, your thoughts?
Well, I think that this is a ransom demand. We don't have the ransom letter from Mitch McConnell yet, but I think that he's posturing so that he can demand more stuff. I mean, I personally am revisiting 2009 because that's when I went to Arkansas and helped get the Affordable Care Act passed in the first place. So it's just been reviewing that again and again and again over the years as Republicans attacked the ACA. We never got past 2009, 2010, apparently. But in this case, I think that they think that they can get some stuff in exchange for not crashing the government, or they think if they crash the government, voters will take it out on Biden.
Yeah, no, I see that as well. But understand, I go back to something Dick Cheney said, while he was vice president. He said, of the Democrats, they'll cave. It's what they do. And what has been learned behavior is when Republicans do this stuff, Democrats do tend to give in. And I point back to the sequester, where they across the board painful cuts to programs that we desperately needed. They got their pound of flesh. Sarah, your thoughts?
But if you remember during the Trump administration, whenever they had a shutdown, and it was the longest shutdown in government history that we have ever had in this country, I think it was 35 days. Republicans tried the exact same thing, and Trump tried to pretend that he refused, that he wasn't gonna sign the budget because he wanted funding for the wall and like all this other stuff, and the economy tanked and everything was terrible and it lasted forever, and it just made Republicans look awful. So I mean, it's even during the Obama years, everybody knew that the shutdown was because of the Republicans, and keep seeing Democrats being the ones to give in and, go and try and meet with them and, over and over and over again. And I think, even in this case, I just imagine Biden, pulling a Bartlett and walking up to the Capitol and trying to meet with Mitch McConnell or, and Republicans and being like, come on, guys, like, what the hell's the problem?
Yeah.
And I think that would be the way to sort of, hang it around their neck.
No, look, Democrats during the Trump years gave in. They gave because they didn't want to crash the economy. They wanted things to go well. And this is, in my view, and you guys can disagree or agree with me. It's in my view, I think Republicans are wired mentally to be okay with scorched earth. They're okay with causing pain for certain groups of people, especially working people. That's where Democrats it's not in them to go scorched earth. And Republicans know that, which is why Dick Cheney would say they always cave. It's what they do.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you have one party that cares about outcomes and one party that is nihilist and just cares about points.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. But I think if they mess around with this and get a little too close to what it is that they're after, if they actually do cause a shutdown, what I think could be the end result of that is they could lose the filibuster. Because what better argument is there to destroy the filibuster than, hey, a minority part of the U.S. government can shut down the government for everyone and can keep your grandmother's Social Security check from coming just out of pure meanness. We need to take this away from them because they're not adults and they can't, they obviously can't have this kind of power. So we have to take it away. I think it's cover for at least adjusting how the filibuster works, maybe getting rid of it altogether.
No, that would be something positive to come out of it. I just don't see that. But I'm looking at it, if the dog does catch the car, I believe Mitch McConnell thinks that, the average person has the attention span of a gnat, and they're not going to be held accountable for it. And what they, in the long run, could do is delay and slow the process of getting something actual done, like infrastructure, the Build Back Better plan that would make people's lives better and create a different kind of economy. So for me, this looks like just a stall and delay tactic. Sarah, your thoughts?
I would hope that Democrats would be able to, like, if we do shut down the government, be able to pitch to Americans, look, Republicans are trying to stop you from having roads and bridges. They're trying to stop you from having, child care and paid family leave. And and they're against the child tax credit, and they didn't want to support the stimulus. I mean, it's just like, you really can label them as the party of no, which is what we did in the 2006 elections, which was really successful. And so the Democrats sort of look like the party of, we want to give you stuff. We want to give you all your money back, that all your tax money that you're paying to the government. We want to give it back to you in infrastructure and all of these amazing things. Republicans just want to, destroy the economy. And I mean, I think that's an easy message to explain to people.
Yeah, and of course, enrich the billionaire class who through this pandemic have done wildly well. Thank you very much. But the other part of this for me is talking about the debt as a whole. Look, I got some problems with the debt that we have and how it was run up. And I go back to, to college, Econ 101, the difference between good debt and bad debt. And overwhelmingly, we see Republican debt being bad debt. We're just giving billionaires more money, where Democrats are trying to invest in things. And I went back and I did just some quick math. And you look at the debt that we're in, overwhelmingly, it's been Republican presidents who have run up the most debts. You go to Reagan, the two Bushes, and Trump. You're up over $17 trillion. You look at the Carter, Clinton, and Obama. You're at 10. So the party who's telling us we need to be fiscally responsible, they seem to be the drunken sailors in this equation.
And 98% of that debt was from somebody who's not named Joe Biden.
Correct. Absolutely correct. But here again, I go back to the fact that, we've given massive tax cuts to the very wealthy and claim that that's going to stimulate the economy. And it hasn't. It just hasn't happened, Laura.
Exactly. I mean, trickle down just doesn't work. If you give money to rich people, maybe they buy a 15th yacht, but most likely it sits in their bank account. That's why Build Back Better is so important, because it puts money into the hands of people that will spend it and grow our economy. But back to the question of what do we do about this? I think it was Nancy Pelosi has an interesting position that the Constitution says that we already can spend, that this whole debt ceiling limit is self-inflicted, and all we need to do is point out the emperor has no clothes and go about our business.
Right.
So, I mean, there would certainly be lawsuits and things, but that's something that we could try.
No, the key here is the money's already been spent. We're not spending any money. It's been allocated. It's been spent. This is just saying, Laura, you've already bought, everything. You bought the groceries, you bought the dress, you bought the new car, you bought the house. You just now got to pay for it. That's all we're saying, that we've got to pay the bills. How hard is this?
It shouldn't be that difficult. I mean, you would think, especially with the Republicans, that, I mean, they voted for the defense reauthorization funding. They voted for the first stimulus. They voted for the 2021 budget, which they passed in 2020. So all of this money that they have spent in between the last debt ceiling raise and now, again, all of that is Donald Trump. So they supported it the first time. Why do they not support it now?
Yeah, almost $8 trillion spent. And I had a conservative friend tell me, Donald Trump, up until the pandemic, he had the lowest rate of debt growth of any president. And I go, yeah, because he inherited an economy that was doing very well, unlike what Obama inherited and unlike what Clinton inherited. There was cleaning up that had to be done during those two administrations. So we're talking apples and oranges here. But, Brett, you just can't get people to think in those terms that, the day things start is the day that, the day the administration changes, everything was theirs, that there's some bleed over.
Yeah, there really is. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that we are, extremely, if not hopelessly partisan these days. So we lack the ability in many areas to look at these issues reasonably, and so everybody is just trying to win for their side. So it's not about what's good for the country or what's good for you or what's good for the neighbors. It's to use an Ohio term, it's Browns Bengals. We're gonna root for our team, and we're only going to speak well of our team. We're only going to speak poorly of that other team, and that's just the way it's going to go. And I realize the irony of that as I sit here, saying that wearing an Ohio State hat, because I've never had a good word to say about Michigan in my life, nor will I. But that's kind of how we are. We're no longer in a situation where we're trying to come together and have arguments and disagreements, but the same goal, which is what's best for the American people. Now we have gotten to the point where it is solely, completely, and only about winning in the acquisition of power, and the good of the American people be damned.
Yeah.
So and that's kind of where, and when that's the environment that we're living in and working in, it's impossible to come to any type of compromise or see anyone else's position, and it's just it's kind of a hopeless situation to be in.
Yeah. So Laura, I know you're a Michigan fan. Are you going to let that go?
No. First of all, go blue. Second of all, there's also this whole conservative media ecosystem from Fox News on down to, the runts of the litter with Newsmax and OANN that is pushing misleading information and outright falsehood. So I think a lot of people out there are being weaponized in ways they don't even necessarily know or understand, because they are swimming in a sea of falsehoods. And I think that's a problem. And I don't know that we really have a handle on it. Like, what do we do when there's this whole ecosystem pushing out things that are not true?
Yeah. No, I mean, on the debt front, I had someone tell me, Obama ran up all the debt. I'm going, I don't think you know what you're talking about, and you should stop. You're going to hurt yourself. Don't do that. But a second ago,
Google
you said
is your
that.
friend.
Yeah. What's that?
Google is your friend.
Yeah. But Laura, a second ago, you said when you give rich people money, they spend it on things. And today, this story came out that, they do spend it on things. They spend it on politicians like Kristen Sinema, who evidently got $750,000 from Big Pharma. This isn't new. I think she's been in their pocket for a very long time. But it might explain a little bit of how she is now voting against the prescription drug bill that could lower the prices for all of us.
Well, she said she's against it so far, so she hasn't taken a vote, and we'll see what winds up coming before her to take that vote. But I think you're absolutely right in that we need to tax the rich, not only because we need the money to invest in things that are good for all of us, but also to limit the power that rich people have to buy off our entire system of government, to buy off our media, to set up cable news networks that push nothing but falsehoods. I mean, we've allowed money and power to accumulate in the hands of such a very few people. It's warped our entire government and our entire culture to some extent.
Brett, you got a thought?
Yeah, I could not agree with that statement more. Think about what we've been seeing recently. I was just watching I wasn't watching it, but I saw it in the preview window of Netflix the other day. There's a new Elon Musk documentary out that is designed solely to say how he's going to take us to Mars and he's this great humanitarian. And meanwhile, as we're running up all these bills that we're now trying not to pay, we gave most of that money to Jeff Bezos, who used it to build a penis rocket and launch himself into space. You know what I mean? And it's ridiculous. We have a billionaire space race instead of universal health care. It is the most ridiculous thing imaginable, but here we are. And if we really step back and look at it, see it for what it is, rather than, how it's being presented to us, how it's being spun, how we're being played against each other, left, right, and center, it becomes pretty obvious that, wait a minute, something's wrong here. And the wealthy in America are just eating our lunch. I mean, they're just crushing us. And we got to do something about it. I don't know necessarily what that thing is, but we better come together and figure out a solution, because these folks are out of control.
It's crazy. And look, they say, two things are inevitable: death and taxes. Well, both Musk and Bezos, they've figured out how to get out of paying taxes. I'm sure they're probably working on how they get into the next life as well. But guys, I got to take a quick break right here. On the other side, I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we're seeing coming out of the White House about potentially releasing information around January 6th. So stick around. We're right back after this. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1906. That was the day that Dr. Harriet Louise Hardy was born in Arlington, Massachusetts. She pursued a career in medicine, driven by personal family tragedy. She lost her father to pneumonia when she was only 4 years old. She also lost a baby brother to the 1918 influenza outbreak. Dr. Hardy became an early leader in the field of occupational medicine. She was also the first woman to become a full professor at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Hardy began her career in occupational medicine when she began to investigate the causes of illness among workers making fluorescent lights in factories north of Boston. Many of these workers were women. Dr. Hardy researched the cases of berylliosis in Lynn and Salem, Massachusetts. The metal beryllium is used in the making of the lights. Inhaling dust or fumes of the metal can be deadly, but symptoms often do not begin to show up until years after exposure. Symptoms include shortness of breath, coughing, and scarred lungs. Dr. Hardy developed the National Beryllium Registry. It was one of the first registries of its kind to track the impact of a chronic health disorder. Her research helped lead to safety measures in the handling of this dangerous metal. Dr. Hardy also worked with unions, including the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union and the United Mine Workers, to identify and address workplace health hazards. These included substances like lead, mercury, anthrax, and asbestos. She wrote a textbook on the subject of industrial toxicology with another pioneer in the field of occupational health, Dr. Alice Hamilton. Dr. Hardy helped to forge new ground in making job sites more safe and healthy for workers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, fun tweet of the day. You remember Kayleigh McEnany? Remember her? Yeah, go way, way back into the Wayback Machine. The former guy's press secretary. She tweeted out that, quote, the U.S. murder rate under Joe Biden, and she linked to this crime statistic that went from 1960 to 2020 that showed 2020 by far the worst year for murders in the 60 years there. By far, I mean by way far. This is the first time that I think I've ever seen a previous administration point to the current administration and blame them for bad things that they did, trying to get that off. I mean, the good stuff that happens, they all take that. Yeah, we see they're doing well because of us. I don't think I've ever seen this. Now, she quickly deleted it, got mocked horribly on Twitter, as she should. I just find it really funny, and here to share some thoughts on, is this expected? Is this what we missed? I've got our all-star panel of Brett Pransky, Laura Packard, and Sarah Burris. Guys, thanks for sticking around.
Hey, thanks.
So let's start with you, Brett. This is a big deal. Do you find this as funny as I do?
Well, I do find it funny that she didn't, seem to understand that the new administration started in 2021, and she was literally telling on herself and her administration. But I think the numbers themselves are important to pay real attention to. I mean, because in 2020, we had a massive spike in the number of murders in the United States of America. And that's something that we need to pay attention to. There's a real problem there. And honestly, while I'm sure there are several factors and lots of different reasons why the numbers are what they are, but I think it's, in today's America, we need to understand that we probably have a higher population of purely desperate people than we ever have before. Again, we talk about income inequality. We talk about jobs and wages and people not being able to get by, and and the fact that it's harder to build a life in America now than it ever has been before. And so now we see the rise in which you can easily make an argument that this is a response to that desperation, because these kinds of crimes are not committed by people who are stable and who feel good about the way their life is going. I mean, these kinds of crimes are committed by very desperate, angry people. And so here we are, we're seeing what could very possibly be the result of just, the how hard it is to live in America these days.
Yeah, no, and look, the UK has done a bunch of studies on when conservative governments take over, and they push for draconian policies, slash social programs, that suicide rates go up. So for me, in looking at this graph that she puts out, you can go back and look, recession, you see bad economic times, you see these things go up when the economy's doing well. Things go down. It seems like that kind of a cycle. So for me, looking at how bad things were during the Trump years, you go, it was no wonder people are ticked off, Laura.
Yeah, and also I think we're one of the few countries that has such an easy flow of guns. I mean, we make gun violence possible, and that's something that we have tried and failed to do something about for years and years and years now.
Guns don't kill people, though. People do.
People kill people with guns.
The gun helps. You ever see the comedian Eddie
really
Izzard?
Helpful. You can't look at somebody and say bang.
Yeah. Eddie Izzard had the best thing. You go, no one does that.
Really
the heart might be a little dodgy, but.
This is the best line ever. But Brett's right. Like the thing that's so tragic here is that it is easier to buy a gun in this country than it is to get out. And especially for my generation, like we've got completely screwed on being able to have the American dream because of what Republicans did to the economy, what Wall Street did to the economy in 2007 and 2008. So, I'm still mad about it. I want to see indictments.
Yeah, and here again. Now, I said from the beginning when Biden became president, there was no way Biden was going to do anything to hold the previous administration accountable. It's not what we do in this country. We didn't hold Nixon accountable. We didn't hold Reagan accountable. We didn't W. Bush. We didn't hold him accountable. We just didn't do any of that stuff. We didn't hold the banksters accountable. We don't do this. We don't hold rich people accountable. This story that Joe Biden is leaning towards releasing information about Donald Trump tells me that maybe, possibly, we might be looking in at holding somebody accountable. And as Biden said, January 6th was the game changer in all of this. Sarah, let's start with you. Thoughts? Do we get to see any of this stuff? Do you think he actually does it?
I think he will. I think based on what folks have been explaining about this is that's where the line is for Biden. When you talk about a coup, an attempt to overthrow the legislative branch of government, that's a pretty big line for him. And so this idea of, executive privilege for a former president to cover up a crime, and the courts have made that pretty clear in the Nixon case that, executive privilege does not extend to covering up your criming. If there is evidence of a crime, then you have to actually give access to all of the information that's subpoenaed. So, I think Biden has a little bit of legal cover to be able to say, I'm just following what the precedent is. I think Trump is going to end up suing, and it's going to be another one of those stupid lawsuits that last 11 billion years, like we did with the taxes. But I don't know that it's necessarily going to work.
Laura, thoughts?
Well, I think like what you said, we haven't held people accountable. And when we don't do that, they're emboldened. They just get worse. They do more and bigger criming until somebody stops them. So I think it's time. I mean, these folks tried to overthrow the government. If we don't act now, when do we ever?
Yeah. Do you think, Brett, do you think he does it?
I think he does, because in the open to the segment, you said that we don't hold these people accountable. We don't have a history of holding these people accountable. We've never done it before. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, every time you mention one of these things, I was thinking in the back of my head, but we've never stormed the Capitol before, and over and over again. Yeah, but none of these people ever kicked down the doors of the Capitol or tried to hang the vice president, So I think we're in uncharted waters here. It's true that past history is that past history. We've never held these people accountable. but we are in completely uncharted. We've never been here before.
Yeah. No, we'll just kick in poor people's doors and evict them from their houses. That's okay. That's
just shoot them outright.
There is
Right.
that. But so, Sarah, let me start with you because what is it that Joe Biden can release? Phone records. What is it that would be information that would be helpful in the investigation to find out what the White House was doing, what the administration was doing on January 6th and the days leading up to it? What do you think is available?
So phone records, any emails from anybody in the White House, any staffer of the White House, any text messages that were sent over a government phone. I think probably what will be one of the most important things are just the flat out call logs, because you'll see all of those Republicans that, called him over the course of, a couple of days. They were talking to him on the 5th. Marjorie Taylor Greene was in the White House on the 5th. And so, the 5th and the 6th, what was, who was he talking to? What was being said? And once somebody was talking to him, then you can, subpoena that person and be like, so what were y'all talking about? The weather?
The weather was cold that day. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was nice. It was a balmy day. There was a lot of nice people out on the lawn. They had flags. They were waving flags that day, Laura. It was a beautiful day, a patriotic day.
I'm sure they were talking about American Idol, Sarah. So, I mean,
Spicer on Dancing with the Stars.
Exactly. We need to hold people accountable. The last time we had an attempted violent overthrow of our country was several years of civil war, and we sort of did accountability for a while after that, but then that sort of stopped, and we continue to see those divisions today. The Confederacy lost, but that's not even being taught in some schools in the South. So Trump lost the election, but there is a goodly chunk of people in this country that don't know that, don't believe that. And we are sowing the seeds for another 100 years of strife if we don't figure out how to get through this and hold people accountable.
Absolutely. And I want to know what Lauren Boebert was doing and the Trader Green woman and Josh Hawley and Madison Cawthorn and all of the people who now there's a claim out there. A representative is saying that there was cheering and there were representatives who were happy that things happened. I can see those people being the ones who were happy because they were the one, Josh Hawley, the famous fist pump and all of that. It was a horrific day, but I got to wonder, is it accurate? Were there people cheering in Congress while their doors were being knocked on? Let's go to you, Brett. Thoughts?
Sure, I certainly think that's possible. I mean, when you just look at the day-to-day behavior and you keep asking yourself, how low will they go? And the answer is always, well, yeah, they'll go that low. You put the bar all the way to the ground, they'll dig a hole to get under it. So the idea that, if someone said that there were people who were potentially cheering or saying, yeah, this is a great thing, look at what all these great patriots, yeah, I buy that possibility. I'm not going to go out and say, oh, it happened and it was certain, because, I don't repeat that kind of stuff like that. But it's definitely possible that it did happen. And if it did, it's certainly something that I wouldn't put past them.
No, it's crazy. And I hope Joe Biden does release it. I hope we get to the bottom. I hope we find every person who funded the bus trips and funded what happened on January 6th. And we give people nice long prison terms and we hold people accountable for the first time in my lifetime. I hope that's where we go. I do want to change topics right here because a couple of things popped up I thought were interesting this week. Representative Christy Houlihan here in Pennsylvania put forth an amendment, an idea that, hey, maybe we should make women be susceptible to selective service. We're going to start drafting women. Let me start with you, Sarah. Should we start drafting women into the military as we've been doing with men?
Yes, absolutely. Because women are great for the military. I mean, that's the thing, is that women are, we've proved over and over again that women in the military are fantastic. So I think there's no reason to, say, oh, we have to protect the ladies from from the combat. No, women are strong and amazing and smart, and they can contribute to the military just as well as men do. I think where we should be trying to draft people is making sure we can draft rich people who normally would flee the country or all of a sudden get boned first.
No, I'm right there with you. Brett, let me go to you because you had a great idea. Don't draft the rich people, just draft their money.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because we don't do a very good job drafting, people of means. We always leave in loopholes and things like that. It ends up being the children of poor and working class families end up fighting our wars for us. But if we're going to draft people, or especially if we're going to allow our wealth class to get so ridiculously wealthy and completely out of bounds kinds of wealth, yeah, we should put a little bit of that back. So you know what? The United States Army sponsored by Jeff Bezos. I'm totally for that. Let's put next year's Pentagon budget on the Bezos family. Let's go ahead and do that. I mean, it's as reasonable a way to draft and conscript folks as any other we've ever had.
No, I'm right there with you. Personally, I think we should do away with the draft. We're not gonna have it, but if you're gonna have it, everyone's got to be in it, because then maybe everyone's gonna vote, because it could be my behind. Laura, your thought of the last bit on this?
Exactly what you said. I don't support the draft. I don't support endless wars, but I think that it should be fair. If you're drafting men, why should you not draft women? And you should certainly draft billionaires. And
their money as well. That's my view. Last bit. Howard Stern came out, said that Joe Rogan is making things worse. How is it that Fart Man is now the moral compass of the country?
That's how bad things are in the United States. Like, the virus is so terrible. We have wrecked so many lives and so many families that the voice of reason is Howard Stern.
And the thing is, I love Howard Stern. I've listened to him for years. I'm a big fan. But this just shows me how far off the rails we've gotten when this is finally someone who spoke up in a position of power and said, no, you're making this worse. This whole idea that you're taking the kitchen sink instead of just getting the freaking vaccine is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it is shocking to me that people would rather take an unproven medical invention like the monoclonal antibodies instead of a vaccine that at this point hundreds of millions of people around the world have taken with few major side effects. So why are you taking the $3,000 experimental cocktail instead of the $30 vaccine that you won't pay a cent for?
No, and the important part is that he's got the resources to be able to do this. And I said this the day that he came out and said, we threw the kitchen sink at it. I took the ivermectin, this, that. They go, yeah, you've got the resources to have the best medical people around you to administer the drugs in the exact right amounts. You're not lug nut running down to Tractor Supply, getting the buy one, get one and saying, if one's good, two's got to be better. No, you've got the best medical professionals money can possibly buy that a good portion of the people in this country don't have. And I do agree. I agree with Stern. He's making it worse. Brett, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think what makes it even worse is the fact that not only does he have, access to the best medical care in the world, he also has a massive platform. So by saying we threw the kitchen sink at it, we're going to do this and this and this and this. He is telling people to do that same thing, even if that's not his intent. Even if he says, well, this is what I did and it was right for me and you make your own choices, even if you put those caveats in there. When you say that kind of thing with that kind of platform, that kind of massive microphone that he has, you're going to steer people in the wrong direction. And, again, we talked earlier about accountability and the fact we don't hold people accountable. And I don't necessarily know how to do it in an instance like this. But man, there should be some form of accountability for encouraging people to do these things that are horribly dangerous for them.
At some point, I hope we come to our collective senses. But sadly, the amount of misinformation out there, and I don't know how you combat that. I don't know how you, outside of having panels like this to say, to point this stuff out. I don't know how you combat it.
don't
Well,
think.
I mean, the platforms, the social media platforms do have some responsibility and they do take some action to tamp down the misinformation, but not as much as they should. They should be doing a lot more because the information that's flowing out there is ridiculous. Like Joe Rogan taking ivermectin or Nicki Minaj's cousin's friend's ball size. Like do something to spread good information instead of weaponizing this bad information to flow ever faster to more people.
Yeah, my Jeep broke down. My mechanics asked me if I got the vaccine, and I said, "Yep." He goes, "Well, there it is." So my Jeep broke down because I got the vaccine. That's how ludicrous some things have gotten. It's crazy. Crazy times. But guys, I appreciate you sticking around for us. Appreciate you guys on the panel. As always, fantastic stuff. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Make sure you follow our all-star panel, Brett Pransky, the professor. You can follow him on social media at Brett Pransky. Also, Laura Packard. Make sure you follow the work that she does. We'll get links out on social media. And, of course, Sarah Burris of Raw Story. Make sure you check out the fabulous work that she does over there at rawstory.com. If you got questions, you got comments, there's a topic you'd like us to cover, by all means, reach out to me at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell us what you think. We would love to hear the feedback. Thanks so much for being here. If you miss any portion of the program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on social media at Twitter, at Rick Smith Show. Also, give us a like over at Facebook. Subscribe over at YouTube. Do all those things. That's how you can interact. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. It's time for The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a week it was. Lots of craziness, lots of, well, stuff we already knew, some smoking gun verification, the former guy having lots of problems finding, I don't know, people to represent him, just lots of stuff. And, well, it looks like we're going back to the past for some old hits, and here to share some thoughts on the week that was and all of the crazy